ladies and gentlemen, those who are here in the Western world, the western side of the Atlantic, and good afternoon to those in Saudi Arabia and its regions, and those in between, and to those who are experiencing Ramadan and its blessings. Ramadan Kareem. I hope you have a blessed holy season. We're focusing today on an issue of great moral challenge, and it's also one of logistical operational dynamics and challenges. And this has to do with an examination of the humanitarian challenges of what Saudi Arabia is trying to achieve in Yemen. And it is seeking to accomplish its goals through the King Salman Humanitarian and Relief Center. Its Supervisor General is a guest today who will be presenting for the third time on these and related issues. His Excellency is not just a Supervisory General of a humanitarian and relief operation of massive dimensions, spending more than $5 billion around the world, and not just in Yemen, not just in Saudi Arabia, but in 59 different countries. He's also an experienced medical professional and a former Minister of Health and a doctor who is the world's leading specialist in separating conjoined twins. Now, in some other language, it's referred to as Siamese twins, or twins who are joined at one or another parts of their body to another part of their body, making the life of yet another human being that's linked to them 24 hours a day, 8 days a week, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, 400 days a year. And Dr. Al Rabeeah is the world's leading specialist in separating these kinds of twins, 48 of them to be specific, with 3 more in the pipeline yet to come. Imagine yourself being born unable to be your own true self because there's another whose needs and concerns and interests you have to take into consideration every second of your life. Dr. Al Rabeeah has made it possible for 48 people to become 96 people. This is hard to imagine, and science and technology and the marvels of modern inventions have allowed human and medical scientific progress on these fronts. So we have the world's leading specialists in that regard. In addition to his work supervising the challenging humanitarian work in Yemen. Yemen is one of the least well-known and even less well understood countries on the planet. And it's also one of the most impoverished. And at the present time, and for several years now, one of the most insecure and unstable because of a raging civil war in that country. Now, this is the first time in recorded human history where a war has been transpiring, and at the same time, a major humanitarian relief effort has been occurring alongside the fighting. And the challenges are almost more difficult than one can imagine. And yet the challenges are what Dr. Al Rabeeah has been up to meeting and rising to accommodate. We have, as a moderator for this session, Colonel retired Abbas Dahouk, who was formerly America's Defense and Armed Forces Attaché in the US Embassy in Riyadh, was also advisor to the political military units of the US Department of State, knowing that military actions alone are insufficient if they are not accompanied by political actions to achieve political settlements of people that are at war with one another. So he and Dr. Al Rabeeah go hand in hand with regard to their life's experiences and their professional achievements. Without further ado, Dr. Al Rabeeah, I want Colonel Dahouk, who's now a member of our board of directors, a distinguished member of our board of directors, to moderate this session. We look forward to your presentation, and then, time permitting, to have some questions and comments following your address. Colonel Dahouk.
Dr. Anthony, thank you for the intro, and thank you for your kind remarks. And welcome to our viewers in the United States and abroad, and Ramadan Kareem for all observing this holy month of Ramadan. And welcome, Dr. Al Rabeeah. Good to see you. And our conversation today, as Dr. Anthony mentioned, to talk about the humanitarian aid challenges in Yemen. And we don't have to tell Dr. Abdullah that Yemen is a complex web of issues and challenges. I was in Riyadh when inauguration of this center under the Obama administration. At that time, they were looking at Yemen from the JCPOA lens and also from the UN lens, and they supported the coalition operation by supporting this UN resolution 2216. On the next administration, Trump administration, that looked at Yemen from the Iran maximum pressure on Iran lens. And then we have currently the Biden administration looking at Yemen from the Saudi lens, but they made Yemen priority. They appointed a very competent U.S. diplomat, Mr. Tim Dinderking, which we know very well, and I think he's perhaps the only foreign diplomat that has been working with Yemen consistently since 2013. However, Your Excellency, you and the center, from day one, you looked at Yemen from the prism of the Yemeni people, and your mission was directly from to Yemen under the Yemen government and also under the Houthi occupation of Houthi forces. So with this, I will pass the floor to you to just give us a snapshot on what the center have done since 2015, not only in Yemen but also regionally and internationally. Dr. Abdullah.
Well, thank you, Dr. John Anthony, for your kind remarks, and thank you, Colonel Abbas Dahouk, for your kind remarks, and also for our viewers. Good morning in the West, and good afternoon or evening in the East, and good day for those in between. I would like to welcome you all, and I would like to take your permission to present to you a factual journey that started back in 2015 till today on our work in Yemen and beyond Yemen. So I will have a PowerPoint presentation that will probably show what we have been doing and helping those who are in need. If we look at the slides, if they move, Saudi Arabia, as probably all of you know, has been very active when it comes to humanitarian aid for at least the last 2 decades or more. It has spent more than 93 billion US dollars, helping more than 156 countries. The center was actually inaugurated in May 13, 2015, with a vision that it will become a leading humanitarian center that will also transfer the noble values of humanity to the world, and also to coordinate our activities with the international benchmarks, and also to ensure that our national interests are in line with the humanitarian principles. The center also is very careful when it comes to governance in terms of financial audit, external audit, monitoring process, project management, and also results and performance evaluation, and also implementing the humanitarian charter as globally is being understood. The center has many branches in the regions that we work in and in the continents that we work in. And we have, as you have seen in Yemen, at least 3 branches, and maybe you are adding more. And also in Asia, Africa, and other parts of the world. The center works in the sectors and clusters of humanity, the 12 clusters that are known to all of you, and I don't want to waste your time, but we actually care about all sectors of humanity to ensure that we alleviate the suffering of mankind. Our core values are important. We are impartial, we are transparent, and we care about quality and also being professional. We believe in having initiatives and creativity, and also we believe that we cannot work without strong partnership and also involving the communities that we work in. At present, we have worked in 59 countries. And if we look at reflect that into financial values, more than $5 billion has been implemented in 59 countries with 1,556 projects. Yemen, as you can see, takes the highest of those and receives probably 70% of our aid, followed by Palestine, Syria, and Somalia. We believe in supporting women, so we are a women-focused organization. More than 279 projects were directed to women, reaching more than 72 million beneficiaries globally. Also, children are very valuable for us, and probably I am biased. I'm a pediatric surgeon, and people claim that I pay attention to children and women, and I think these are the most important supporters for the communities. And if we care about the children, we care about the future. We have implemented more than 294 projects globally, reaching more than 118 million children globally. We believe in initiatives and creativities. That's why the center has believed in transparency, and that's why His Majesty directed us to initiate the Saudi Aid platform. And also we believe in volunteers, and we have a very big cadre of volunteers who help us in implementing our work. We also believe that we should support refugees and IDPs globally. And we always believe in involving the society and donors from the society as part of the donors. Our donations come from the government and also comes from donors within the society. There is no humanitarian work without control and monitoring to ensure that you maximize the impact of your work. And also you have to document your activities. This is the Saudi Aid platform, especially for a friendly council. I think this is an easily approached online database, which actually reports all of our work in accordance with the international benchmark as stipulated by OECD DAC and the FTS of the UN. Also volunteers, we started 2 years ago to recruit volunteers from Saudi Arabia. These are young boys and girls of Saudi Arabia who carry the humanitarian principles of Saudi Arabia globally. To date, we have actually implemented more than 118 campaigns, reaching 19 countries with our boys and girls who are volunteering with us, and reaching more than 250,000 beneficiaries. This is one of the programs directed to eye disease and blindness. Also, we believe in children campaigns, especially difficult surgeries like open heart surgeries that we do in many countries in need. This is from Yemen, and we have implemented several of those projects in Yemen. Also, we believe in pediatric surgery and also bone surgery and others that we perform in different parts of the world. Also, refugees, contrary to the belief of many people, Saudi Arabia hosts refugees. I'll come to that later. But also, KSRelief cares about refugees in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Sudan, in Myanmar, and other parts of the world. Unfortunately, the numbers of refugees and IDPs are escalating, and this will actually ask us to maximize the impact of our work towards them. Saudi Arabia hosts over 1 million of refugees. We do not call them refugees, we call them visitors. And as you can see, Yemen takes the highest. We have over 500,000 of refugees from Yemen, and over 250,000 from Syria, and just under 250,000 from the Rohingya minority. Also, we believe that we should involve the society to help us in our humanitarian work, and that's why we have launched an online donation portal, which is very active in this month of Ramadan, and we are receiving a lot of donors to help in global communities. Even during the pandemic of COVID-19, Saudi Arabia has been active, and as you can see, we have probably spent more than $713 million during this pandemic to help countries. And as you can see, Yemen comes always in the front line, but we have also supported international agencies such as Gavi and CEPI and WHO with 500 million during last year of Saudi Arabia presidency of G20. Now, another project that is very unique for Yemen, as you know, Yemen has been suffering from many problems related to the conflict, related to humanitarian crisis, but also another significant challenge for Yemen is actually the landmines. Unfortunately, the Houthi militias have planted more than almost close to 2 million landmines as of today. And we have decided in KSRelief to launch a demining program, which is aiming to have a Yemen without landmines. To date, we have actually managed to deactivate close to 250,000 of those landmines. We hope in this very near future, we will have a Yemen without landmines. These landmines pose significant challenges for families, for women, for children, and they will have long-lasting handicap. One of the problems that also we are proud of in Yemen is the child soldiers rehabilitation program. As you probably know, over 25,000 children have been recruited as a child soldiers, and the ways of recruiting them differs from supporting their families, but goes to supporting them with GAT, which is a narcotic, which you can see in the picture on the right side of the screen. We have started a program to rehabilitate those children with both psychological, social, educational, and family counseling programs to have those children build the future of Yemen, and also prevent them from being a source of danger for the international community, as they could be a potential terrorist if we do not counsel them early and prevent this bad actually violation to happen. Another program that we also believe in is nutrition of children. Yemen suffers significantly, especially children in Yemen suffer from malnutrition. I'm sure you have seen many reports from the UN and from many international NGOs, and that's why we have concentrated on preventing malnutrition in children, and we have so many programs that is aiming to support the children of Yemen. Education is another problem in Yemen. As you know, the conflict has been going now almost for 6 years, and we didn't want to see the children of Yemen lack education, and that's why we have invested a lot in educational projects in Yemen, so that their children will be an asset and resource for them in the future. Also, we believe in women, and that's why we wanted to support the communities by supporting women with some jobs, whether it is tailoring and whether it is related to welding or agriculture or any other talents that we can help with. And we have managed to actually focus on many of those projects that have managed to move those children from being dependent on aid to self-sustaining society. Also, we believe in the reproductive life in Yemen, and that's why we care about the health of women. If we have a healthy woman, we have a healthy child, and the center has concentrated on those programs either directly or with the help of our valuable partners, UNICEF and WHO. We also believe in vocational and training programs to empower women, and that's why we have many NGOs that support us in Yemen, which will actually empower women so that they will be able to help their society. As a result of the landmines, we have seen many actually amputees in Yemen, and that's why we have launched 4 amputee clinics in Yemen. Our aim is not only to treat amputees, but also to transfer the technology to the Yemeni cadre so that the Yemeni will be able to handle those problems in the future. One of the projects that I'm proud of, although it is happened a few years ago, but when Taiz was under complete siege by the Houthi militias, 4 hospitals were under the risk of complete blockage from having no oxygen, no medication. So we decided to have an innovative ways to airdrop the medical supplies for those hospitals, and also to use primitive ways of animal pack by packing the animals with the oxygen cylinders in order to maintain those hospitals alive and thereby to save lives of people who were about to die. In Yemen, KSRelief to date has implemented 590 projects worth of $3.5 billion and $500 million. And in Yemen, as stated by actually Colonel Abbas, our work has been to help all Yemenis. We cared about Yemen from border to border, north and south. We did not differentiate between any governance of Yemen. We believe that all Yemenis deserve attention, and that's why our work in Yemen has been impartial, has been abiding with the international humanitarian law, and we have very valuable partners in Yemen, 80 partners. The UN comes on the top of them. However, we have very important partners internationally from the US and Europe and other parts of the world. These are the clusters that we work in Yemen, and I'm sure all of us will know food security and health and helping actually the IDPs and refugees comes on the top of the line, but also water and sanitation are equally important. Also, when cholera was an epidemic in Yemen, we actually cared a lot about it, and with the help of WHO and the UNICEF and many other important partners, we managed to get rid of or control the epidemic of cholera and save lives in Yemen. In Yemen, we care about women, and that's why equally in Yemen, we are a woman-focused organization. We have almost 220 projects in Yemen were directed for the well-being and protection of the women in Yemen. And the same applies for children. 236 projects were directed for saving and feeding, and also the health and protection of children of Yemen. Now, let me take you in some of the challenges that we face in Yemen. We have actually been, with the help of the UN and international community, looking at these challenges. We have, as you have seen here, the UN international and KSRelief convoys have been targeted with more than 25 incidents, more than 39 detentions, more than 25 hindering and stealing, and also selling the humanitarian goods has been documented in 31 documents. Most of these have happened in the north by the Houthi militias. Another violation that we have seen is using the anti-craft and anti-gun on civilian buildings, basically on houses and also apartment building, which violates any principles of humanity. As we have mentioned, the violations of landmines, which did not follow any principles of maps or guidelines, and these are irrational landmines that has claimed the legs and hands and lives of many innocent people. This picture, I keep repeating this picture because it irritates me a lot. Having a child carry a weapon is a major crime, but when he dies, you call him a martyr. This is against any principles of humanity, and to put their picture as a martyrs in the streets to recruit more children, this is a crime against children and against humanity. Targeting also schools and hospitals is another violation that we have documented in Yemen by the Houthi militias, which violates the humanitarian principles. Saudi Arabia, I'm sure all of you have been watching as late as yesterday, Saudi Arabia still receives Scud missiles, receives also drones, and in numbers, Saudi Arabia to date have been attacked by more than 553 drone attacks, and also more than 346 Scud missiles, and it has claimed life, and it has displaced people, and it has damaged schools and mosques and hospitals in Saudi Arabia. And this is another also escalation of the conflict in Yemen. I will probably take you to something which is close to my heart, and Dr. John Anthony has mentioned kindly the humanitarian work of when it comes to medicine. And for the last 30 years, I have been in touch with children as a doctor, as a father, and also as a human being. And one of the phenomena that has actually came close to me is the conjoined twins, because it is a major actually medical entity which requires a significant technology to help release the suffering of both parents and children. To date, we have seen 116 conjoined twins in Saudi Arabia from more than 21 countries. And we have managed actually to separate 48 conjoined twins, producing 96 actually safe children to life, and actually decreasing their sufferings of being together, and also bringing a smile to them and to their family. I'll just show you examples of them. This is, I have seen those twins in 2005 from Poland, and I have seen them actually 2 years ago. They are almost as tall as me. And when I visited Poland to attend the humanitarian forum, and they still remember how they were actually miserable when they were joined, and how they became free now. Also, one of the earliest twins that I have separated back in 1992 from Sudan, and those twins have graduated from the university in Saudi Arabia and still carry positive memories of being free and being able to work and have independent life. Another twins from the Philippines who have actually grown and became also almost adults, and they have enjoyed a very safe and normal life. And also another twins from the Cameroon, from a poor family, and we managed to separate them, and now they are becoming in their teens. We actually will move you to something which is global. KSRelief is also a key member and partner with actually the Life and Livelihood Fund, together with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the Islamic Bank, with Abu Dhabi Foundation, and also with the Qatar Foundation. This is actually meant to help many countries in the OIC group, and to date it's directing its aid to 33 countries to help communities to stand on themselves and actually take them away from being dependent on direct relief and aid. Before I close, I just want to say a word of appreciation of our important partners, UN and global partners, but one of our very important partners is USAID, whom we have worked together from day one, and they have actually done a lot to help us build our capacity. And to date, we are actually proud that we are co-funders of many projects that are, one of them has been actually signed, and many are coming in the pipeline. I want to close by a short summary that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia still plays a leading role in the international humanitarian work. I believe that there is an importance of the Kingdom humanitarian work in supporting its international stance. And we believe that the role of humanitarian work is important in resolving the conflict, achieving stability, and also sustainable development. There is no work without partnership, and that's that the partnership between Saudi Arabia, represented by KSRelief, and the United States by USAID is an ideal model for increasing the impact of humanitarian work on the ground. My time is over. Thank you for yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Al Rabeeah. Once again, you provided information that is difficult, unnecessarily difficult for Americans and many others beyond the kingdom to obtain and to assimilate, absorb, accommodate, and appreciate. We're trebly grateful to you because this is your third time sharing your expertise, your information, your experience with people who are eager to know that which they are unaware and unappreciative of, that the kingdom is doing in its humanitarian relief efforts, not just locally, domestically, and not just neighborly with regard to Yemen and other Arab countries, such as the Sudan, which you point out, Myanmar and Turkey, Pakistan, Palestine, and elsewhere. If you have time, Your Excellency, for some questions and comments, if you would permit that, I would like to ask Colonel Dahouk if he would moderate this part of the session. Colonel Dahouk.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony, and thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for, again, very informative. It's indeed is a daunting task, and like I mentioned earlier, Yemen is a web of complex issues, and just the humanitarian aid is a complex issue by itself. Let me start. One thing we didn't mention is a challenge. I'm sure it's the epidemic, the COVID-19 epidemic. Is challenge for countries everywhere, even in the United States, let alone in this complex in Yemen. And I would like to also mention that you have also international reach, and probably also reaching out to help on the same thing, other countries. We had this week also a guest of His Excellency Walid Jablat from Lebanon, and he also described the dire need also for the COVID-19 in Lebanon, and he said the vaccination was only 1% of the population thus far, and on this rate, it's going to take him years to finish. So tell us a little, if there's tell us what's going on in Yemen and what are the challenges you're facing, and is there programs to reach out outside Yemen on that issue?
Well, thank you, Colonel Abbas, and also appreciate the kind words of Dr. John Anthony. Actually, as you mentioned, COVID-19 has been a huge challenge for the international community. It hasn't been an easy year in 2020, and I think it's also 2021 has been equally difficult. From the beginning of the conflict, when we talk about Yemen, I have been approached by the Prime Minister of Yemen, who called me and he said, listen, Abdullah, we do not have capabilities in Yemen and we need your help. They don't have, unfortunately, they didn't have any diagnostic machines. They don't have any PPEs and others. So we immediately responded to support and build the capacity of the Ministry of Health of Yemen. We have, within a few weeks, managed to support them with many diagnostic machines, also kits for the diagnosis. We also support them with PPEs and also thermal cameras and others. And till today, we are still supporting the Ministry of Health of Yemen. We're not the only country, but we are one of the main countries supporting them. In addition to that, we supported Yemen through WHO and through UNICEF so that the capacity will be maximal. And as you have seen in my presentation, we are also starting to build up their capacity when it comes to the vaccination process. Saudi Arabia has already, through KSRelief, communicated with the government of Yemen and through Gavi. It happened that just 1 hour before this valuable meeting, I was in the Gavi ministerial meeting, and we are actually seeing what we else can do through Gavi and also bilateral help. So in Yemen, to answer your question, Colonel Abbas, we are supporting them from the beginning till today. We are also building the capacity of the Ministry of Health in Yemen in terms of recording, auditing, and other things. But also we are supporting them with the vaccination through Gavi and COVAX facility, but also on a bilateral basis. When it comes beyond Yemen, we are also working. By the way, during the conflict, we have helped more than 20 countries in the readiness of COVID-19, and Lebanon is one of those countries, and we're still actually being in touch. Lebanon has a very actually active, pleasant ambassador in Saudi Arabia who is in direct communication with me on weekly basis. So we have been working with Lebanon and other countries in the region to support them. We have invested 200 million to support countries during 2020. And I have been approached by the Embassy of Lebanon when it comes to vaccination. And this has been now discussed, and I'm sure Lebanon will be one of the countries that will receive our attention. So does many other countries that we are now reviewing so that we can help them with the acquisition of vaccination. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. That's for your answer. The other crisis that we also hear in the media, it's the possibility of famine in Yemen. And I'm sure there's a lot of work you do in there with other organizations and also donors. Could you tell us a bit about that? What is the extensive of the possibility of a famine crisis in Yemen?
Well, thank you. As we all know, like Dr. John Anthony and yourself, I am also a person who has been in touch with Yemen and have visited Yemen many times. So I know Yemen before the conflict. As a doctor, I used to go to train some of the doctors in Yemen before the conflict. So Yemen has a bad start, as we all know. Yemen has difficulty and challenges before the conflict when it comes to nutrition and malnutrition and food security. When the conflict started, and because of the crisis, the problem has escalated and has become a challenge. In 2018, there was a risk of famine, And as you remember, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and US and UK have responded positively, and we managed to prevent famine from happening. And we thank the UN and the international NGOs for using the funds appropriately to prevent famine. Now, in 2020, because of COVID-19, but more so because of many violations that has happened in Yemen, and unfortunately, and this is happening in the north by the Houthi militias, and this has been actually alluded to by many UN organizations, there has been stealing and using the food for other purposes. Unfortunately, the militias will bypass the aid to different purposes, and has been used by them to support their military capacity. And in addition, there has been some dues on the humanitarian work, and there has been also threatening to the humanitarian workers. And many of the regions have taken advantages of COVID-19. But however, we have sat together early on this year, and there has been a pledging conference that has happened. And Saudi Arabia, as you all know, has been the top donors and responder for Yemen for the last 5 or 6 years. And this year has pledged $443 million US. In addition to that, KSRelief will continue its food security program, nutritional program, which will add another also support to Yemen, in addition to our pledge to the UN. And we also thank the US. They have been generous in their donation. We thank the UK, UAE, and many other donors. And also we invite other donors to come and respond. I'm optimistic. I'm a doctor. I have to be optimistic. I'm optimistic with the dedication of the donors and with the hard work of the UN and the humanitarian agencies. I'm confident that we will be able to prevent famine from happening in Yemen.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. You mentioned a bit in your presentation about refugees, and you said something about Yemen refugees in Saudi Arabia. It's one thing from the Saudi perspective. You know, Yemen, they're the backbone of the labor force, and I don't think you have refugees in there. But how is that? How is the situation of the Yemenis that have a lot of families in Yemen under the government? Also, majority perhaps they have their families under the Houthi control. So how is the Yemenis' status in Saudi Arabia? Dr. Abdullah, I think you're mute.
No, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. In Saudi Arabia, let me clarify to the viewers. In Saudi Arabia, we have workforce from Yemen, but we have also visitors or refugees from Yemen. So we have actually over 3 million from Yemen. 2.5 are legal actually workers who have families, who have jobs in Saudi Arabia. And they benefit the economy of Yemen because they transfer their salaries to their families in Yemen. But in addition to that, after the beginning of the conflict, there has been crossing of the borders by Yemenis who have been under the danger of the conflict. Those actually have come to Saudi Arabia. They have been given status of visitors. They actually been affiliated with families, whether they are Yemeni families or Saudi families in different parts of the kingdom. And all the national charity organizations support them. His Majesty the King has passed a law that their children, the children of the visitors or refugees, can access free public schools. and they can also access free public health program for them and their children, and they can enter the workforce of Saudi Arabia if they wish to do so. We do not put them in camps. We actually integrate them into society, like all civilized countries do globally. I hope I addressed your question, Colonel Abbas.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Exactly. I want you to point out that little details that you don't hear much about it in the traditional media. I want to take you back to the topic of child soldier. I thought you mentioned it in your briefing, and you mentioned it before multiple times about, and also you call them, heard you once say that they're not soldiers, they're child victims. They are victims of war. And those victims, you said, they potentially could be a future terrorist. I mean, I grew up in Lebanon during the Civil War. I was one of these young soldiers with AKM. 47 in my hand. I did many training, and at the age of 17, as I'm still I'm still a child, I found myself in the former Soviet Union doing training back then. But I'm lucky, fortunate enough to come in the United States and be in the Army. But you have thousands, you said 25,000 or more in Yemen. There's probably 200,000 or more worldwide the child soldiers. So what can we do? How can we help from the Council, from the United States, help you to make this issue is part of the peace process, another major issue on the table, not just standard aid and writ large, but be a specific to tackle this phenomena.
Well, I really thank you, Colonel Abbas. Very, very important question and point that is really probably underestimated globally. Children have been used and misused in different purposes, especially in conflict zones. In Yemen, for example, they are victims of war, as you rightly said. And in, for example, South America, they are victims of drug trafficking. And also in Lebanon, as you mentioned, during the civil war, they have been used. So many actually abuse and misuse of children. And unfortunately, we are not doing enough for them. When we look at, for example, child soldier rehabilitation programs, how many of them? Drug trafficking children rehabilitation programs, how many of them? And how much the media has done about them? We find little actually about them. I remember when the Secretary General visited me in the center, Antonio Guterres, he said, Abdullah, I want to see one program, which is the child soldier rehabilitation program. This program has not been given enough support, enough media, and enough coverage for it. And he said this program should be global. I thank the Secretary General. He took it seriously, and they have established a unit under his office, which has taken the child soldier program beyond child soldier. They have taken child soldiers or victims of war, victims of drug trafficking, and you name it. What you could do with us, I think raising attention, raising awareness through your very efficient, valuable council is an important issue. Encouraging countries to do programs to counsel those children. Those are a threat, not for Yemen, not for Mexico or other countries in South America. They are a threat for us in the global community. Those children, if we do not counsel them, tomorrow they will be carrying weapons and threatening the international community. So we have to work hard, put hand in hand, and try to do something about it. Another also appeal is for the academic institutions, universities, colleges. They haven't done much research about it. And let me call through actually this very important meeting today that we encourage also research institutions, universities to study those children and see the psychological and social impact on them for the future. This is actually a mandate on us to do it. And I thank you, Colonel Abbas, for raising it.
No, thank you. I agree with you 100%. And we're here happy to assist any way we can.
Can I add a question myself? Colonel Dr. Al Rabeeah, Dr. Anthony here, building on your response to Colonel Dahouk's question and your pointed answer there. There are strange things in the minds of people who have never been to Yemen. I've been blessed to have visited Yemen 25 times since the late 1960s, to have met with the former President Ali Abdullah Saleh 9 times there, and visited virtually every sub-region of the country with the exception of 2, Sada in the northwest, of course, and near the border with Jazan and Najran, and in the far east, Al Ghaida, which borders Oman. But poverty is a relative thing in the eyes of those who are experiencing it, and devastation as well. Few people know that Yemen is a place where Somali refugees seek to migrate to. Indeed, we're not talking about a few, we're talking about tens of thousands of Somalis who are in Yemen as refugees from war-torn, civil society-torn Somalia. How does KSRelief deal with, acknowledge what are its concerns with that? And how does KSRelief go about the safety of its workers? Humanitarian workers are exposed. They're on the front lines of conflict, as you pointed out, landmines, child soldiers, and people who commit violence because they see no other future in front of them. This aspect, what is the overall coordination, if there is, between and among the many groups that are volunteering, that are participating, that are engaged with KSRelief in Yemen? People tend to be familiar with and comfortable with mainly the areas that they work in, and they're not adequately, effectively knowledgeable of what is going on by those working elsewhere in the country. So there can be competition, there can be duplication, there can be waste. What is the overall supervision of these efforts, yours and others, in Yemen?
Well, thank you, Dr. John Anthony. I think this point is also very important. Yemen, in addition to its own IDPs, carries also the burden of having refugees from Somalia, and let me add also refugees from Ethiopia, unfortunately. And they carry a burden, and the center actually also cares for those refugees. We have implemented many projects for those refugees, in addition to working with UNHCR and IOM to help the voluntary return of those refugees to their homeland as much as we can. But we continue to support those refugees. And when we actually returned a significant number of them on a voluntary basis, we continue to support them in their homeland, which is Somalia and Ethiopia. When it comes, Your Excellency, to talk about the risk, let me admit the risk is huge. In the landmine demining projects, we have lost, unfortunately, God bless them, close to 13 to 15 people who have lost their lives. We have many of our workers have received threatening, and some of them have been actually put in jail for some time by the militias. However, let me talk about the positive side. We are working in very good coordination with the UN and international community. We take advantage of the legitimate government of Yemen. We take advantage of the coalition forces to help protect some of the workers and also guide us on the safe paths. We also take advantage of very credible NGOs in Yemen who work on the Houthi side, who help our workers to reach there safely. With the addition of coordination between UN, between actually involved parties, this will actually maximize the benefit of reaching areas which are usually hard to reach areas. It's not easy to reach some zones of Yemen, but with collaborating with the important players in Yemen, we have managed to succeed to reach almost every government of Yemen, every region of Yemen. And our workers, we have 3 offices in Yemen. They have connections. They have also valuable links with more than 300 to 400 NGOs in Yemen, who actually have been very instrumental to us and to the UN and to the international community to deliver. Without them, it would have been difficult to work in Yemen. Thank you.
Well, a related question, building on Colonel Dahouk's statements of background. He and I share the fact that we both were soldiers at age 17. And at age 17, you're maybe a young adult or late child, however you want to perceive it. But like Colonel Dahouk, I was trained to kill people with my rifle, with my bayonets, with grenades, with gas, and other methods of fighting people in an armed conflict. Subsequently, education was added to that training, to that experience, and provided a broader context of the world in which we live and what produces armed conflict, what sustains them, what maintains them, and what can bring about peace and the alleviation of suffering. The child aspect of this on the education and training front, you showed fantastic slides and pictures of trying to educate and train the future. And you mentioned that if you have healthy children, you have good prospects for a healthier future. If you have educated children, you have the good prospects for a greater educated society. Can you elaborate on this? And is the education being provided only in the safe areas, the liberated areas of Yemen, or is it also taking place in the border areas where Yemenis have fled to Saudi Arabia?
Well, thank you. Well, you, Dr. John Anthony, and Colonel Abbas Dahouk represent the positive side of the Army. Honestly, we want to see people like you who have been carrying weapons and now academicians and holding councils and looking for a brighter future for the humanity. This is what the Army is about. However, when we talk about countries like Yemen and similar situations where children were actually abducted and misused and abused to put them into the conflict, I think this is a major trauma on them. And unless you work hard on them educationally, psychologically, and as you rightly mentioned, on their nutrition, you probably will lose them, and the country will lose them, and the world will lose them. And that's why we have included within this program at least 3 universities with us working to look at a comprehensive package in order to eradicate the effect and the long-lasting bad memories in those children, in addition to a better health and better education, better food and better education. When we talk about education, we carry it in different areas in Yemen, of course, in the regions under the legitimate government, which is the liberated areas, and also in dangerous areas in the borders between, like if we talk about now Maghreb, which is under crisis in terms of conflict, we carry education in the IDPs maps, tents, and the camps. We do not actually leave those children without education. So if you go to Maghreb and visit the camps of the IDPs, you will find that some of the camps have been converted to schools to educate children in isolation of their homes, whether their homes are in Sana'a or Saada or Hajjah. Also in the borders, we carry educational programs. We believe education has no location. Nowadays, you should carry education wherever the children are. If you leave them, then they will be forgotten, they will lose their education, and they will continue uneducated children. I can't claim that we have educated every child in Yemen, but we'll try, we'll do our best. We're working also on the digital technology. Dr. Anthony, I think also there is a demand that we should probably use the benefit of technologies for education in conflict. We could use, most families in Yemen, they have mobiles, they have actually some kind of a TV, and it will not be difficult to use a remote teachers to educate those children instead of leaving them carry weapons and kill their brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah and Dr. Anthony. Let me take you back to the little more of the policy side of it, the House. With the Biden administration, like we mentioned, they make Yemen a priority. They assigned Mr. Tim Linder-King as the envoy, or something the past two administration did not. And they look at now I believe the administration look at Yemen at two-pronged approach: diplomacy and aid. And also they undesignated Houthi, they took him from out of the terrorist designation just to not to impede any aid. So aid is a big policy vector. So how is it going so far? What do you think? What's your message to the envoy or the administration? What else they can do? What you wanted to do more to actually improve on the aid and perhaps bring a peaceful process at the end?
Well, thank you for bringing this item to the agenda today. First of all, as you mentioned, the Biden administration is putting Yemen crisis on their priority, and I have the pleasure to meet Tim Linder-King in my office in Riyadh. He's a pleasant person. He's keen. He knows the situation in Yemen. We have discussed many things, and we share many things in common. And the bottom line that the Saudi government and the Biden administration is to reach a long-lasting peace process. And based on that, Saudi Arabia, as you probably know, have announced a peace initiative that is meant to bring peace and stability to Yemen and to stop the fighting and try to rehabilitate the country of Yemen with the help of the international community. This initiative has been supported by the US, has been supported by the EU, has been supported almost by all the international community. Unfortunately, it hasn't received the support by the Houthis yet. And unfortunately, Iran hasn't supported that. Our feeling that the Houthis will continue to escalate. And if you recall, the initiative, when it was announced, was faced by 10 drone attacks to Saudi Arabia. This is the earliest response to the initiative. And we know, and I'm sure the US government knows, that Iran is behind the Houthis. And what we want to ensure that this priority when it comes to stability and peace will supervene, and there should be more pressure from the international community, the US, EU, Saudi Arabia, and others, on Iran and on the Houthis, that the life and safety of Yemenis should be put on the priority list for all of us. And we cannot continue to feed Yemenis in the context of wars and killing and fighting. People actually are fed up with the fighting. People are now want to live their own life. They want to educate their children. They want to rebuild their houses. And I feel sorry for the Yemenis, whether they live in Sana'a, whether they live in Aden, and whether they live in the north or in the south. All of them, they want to see peace. It's a mandate on us to support the Saudi initiative to call for peace, stop the fighting, and sit on the dialogue table and see a government that will please all parties and also abide with the UN resolutions and also the Yemen National Dialogue resolutions and the GCC initiative. And I can assure you that Saudi Arabia will be one of the front and top countries that will help Yemen, not only for the food security, but also Saudi Arabia already has established an important center for the rebuilding of Yemen. And I'm sure friendly countries like the US and the EU will join that effort once we see peace and stability. I call upon you and others that we should continue to support the initiative and call for this peace plan to come and become implemented in place. And let's put this conflict behind our back, at least in this year, 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. I mean, indeed, this is the only conflict in the world where the one side of the conflict is providing humanitarian aid to all area of operations, regardless of friendly or enemy at the same time. It's an unbelievably complex mission, but like you said, we need to do more. I think just a quick follow-up on, and be my last question here, and on the refugees, because that's also, you mentioned Syria. It's one of the top 4 countries that you provide aid, and we know you have refugees all around Syria, from Lebanon to Turkey to Jordan. But people, they say, well, there's no refugees in Saudi Arabia, and you don't have refugees, you have guests. If you just tell us a little snapshot on how do you support the Syrian refugees through Saudi Arabia?
Well, thank you. We have talked about Yemen, but we are equally working for the Syrians. We have, as you rightly said, there are Syrian refugees in Jordan and Lebanon and in Saudi Arabia as guests or visitors, and in Turkey. And that's why KSRelief has established a branch for KSRelief in Lebanon, and a branch in Jordan, and a branch in Turkey. The aim of those branches is to support the Syrian refugees. For example, if you look at all of those refugees, you'll find our commitment to support them when it comes to food security, when it comes to health. We have our own clinics, polyclinics, and we have also contracts with private hospitals to treat those patients. We have also a community support programs. We have also shelter programs. So our programs for them is huge. We have invested hundreds of millions of dollars for the Syrian refugees and also the Syrians inside Syria. The same applies for the Syrian refugees in Saudi Arabia, which are 263,000. They get the same benefits as the Yemeni refugees. And we hope, like what you hope, that those refugees will receive the same peace that we are hoping for Yemen. We hope to see a peace in Syria sooner than later. We hope to see the Syrian refugees will no longer be in a shelter in Jordan or in Lebanon or in Turkey, and they will go back to their homeland. And Saudi Arabia will continue to support them and support Syria when stability comes back in terms of development. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Just any final thoughts, Dr. Abdullah? Anything we did not mention you would like to add before we pass it to Dr. Anthony for our final comments?
Well, I want to first of all to thank Dr. Anthony, and thank you, Colonel Dahouk, and thank all of those who are watching us today. I appreciate this invitation. I'm really happy to be with you for the third time, and will be always happy to be with you to address anything related to lifting the suffering of mankind. I just want to close by saying Saudi Arabia, neither in Yemen nor in Syria nor any part of the world, wants to see conflict. Saudi Arabia is a country that is always calls for peace and stability, and it has been advocate for the stability in the region and other regions in the world, and will continue to be one of the top donors when it comes to aid globally. And our message is humanity without borders.
Well, thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for all you do for children, women, and people everywhere. And it's been a pleasure. Dr. Anthony?
Yes, thank you, Colonel Dahouk and Dr. Al Rabeeah. You get better and better each time we've been together in terms of the clarity and effectiveness of your message and presentation. The overwhelming vast majority of what you have shared with the viewers and listeners today is unknown by the viewers and the listeners. This is unfortunate, and it's not necessarily to cast fault or blame on who is responsible for this, but to be positive, optimistic, and participatory that we can do something about this by sharing information, by sharing insight, by increasing knowledge, by improving understanding, by enhancing people's education, their empathy, their experience, and their ability to analyze critically and clearly and effectively. Without your kinds of presentations, we would be at a loss to understand what is occurring. And in the absence of understanding, we have misunderstanding. And part of the misunderstanding is to paint a picture of Saudi Arabia as the villain. Just look at many of the congressional testimonies and debates and hearings and statements by politicians left and right and in the center and in the media and editorial opinion, commentaries and writers. Saudi Arabia would appear not to have a friend in the world, and least of all in the United States. So your challenge is awesome, sir. No one can underestimate or be unaware or unappreciative of what it is that you face. And in the case of Yemen, we have a very unique situation. You pointed out that Yemen has more than 300 NGOs. Very few countries in the so-called emerging or developing world, and yet we're all emerging, we're all developing, can claim to have as many as 300 non-governmental organizations. And this is not a manufactured figure. I speak from personal experience. It's been my pleasure, privilege, and honor to have been the only American an observer, an official observer of all of Yemen's presidential and parliamentary elections from 1993 until the present. And during those elections, the campaigns were enhanced enormously by tens of thousands of volunteers, of poll watchers, of individuals who worked to ensure that the elections were open and free and fair and transparent. As one of the observers, participated in the commissions that came up with these evaluations. I would be hard-pressed, others would be hard-pressed to name any other Arab country that has had as many vibrant elections, open, free, transparent elections as Yemen. And if people think, well, he's making that up, no, all one has to do is research the evidence and the facts. In addition, to realize that most of the viewers and listeners today were born and spent at least their early childhood or life when Yemen was as strife-torn as it is now. For example, late 40s, it had a civil war. 1955-56, it was torn by strife with pan-Arab socialist movements. 1962, the latter succeeded in toppling the monarchy in Yemen, which has not been restored. And in that particular case, you had outside intervention, not by Saudi Arabia so much, although Saudi Arabia helped then those who were in exile and had become internally, domestically displaced. But it was primarily Egypt and the Soviet Union. Egypt had some 70,000 armed forces in Yemen trying to bend the government and its people to Cairo's will. This is in the rearview mirror. Yemen became, as Nasser said, my own Vietnam there, and Egypt withdrew. The Soviet Union collapsed, lived in Yemen when it was two Yemens, and the South Yemen was the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen. Its government, if one can believe it, was Marxist-Leninist, the only Marxist-Leninist government in Arab and Islamic history, which existed from the late 1960s to 1970, when, rather 1990, when the two halves of Yemen were united. Most of the Yemeni population over the age of 50 can remember when there wasn't a united Yemen, when there were 17 different governments in what now comprise Yemen. This is hard to imagine. Only if one goes back to the early days of the fledgling Republic of the United States, when there were 13 colonies that became 13 states, can one begin to imagine the turmoil that Yemen has had to endure in order to become a unified state and society. So it has endured these civil conflicts. When I first went to Yemen in the late 1960s, in Salman, the capital of Yemen, now governed by the Houthis, had the largest artificial limbs factory in the world because of the landmines that had been left behind by the Soviet forces and the Egyptians that aided the Republican government of Yemen. So you've gone from that to the collapse of the Soviet Union, the collapse of the Marxist-Leninist government in Aden, the displacement of the monarchy in northern Yemen, and you now have the intrusion, as you've alluded to, of Iran. And people make little of Iran's activism and presence and dynamism. But if you look at it empathetically, as you look at Yemen and the refugee and humanitarian needs of the peoples of the world empathetically, from an Iranian point of view, they're not going to give up. They're not going to give in, certainly not easily. They won't quit. They won't surrender. For the first time in thousands of years, you have the recreation of aspects of a Persian empire. Yemen is part of it. Syria is part of it. Lebanon is part of it. Iraq is part of it. These are realities, and realities are stubborn things. They influence policies. They have an effect on positions. They have a bearing on actions. They can determine attitudes. So we're here for a rough road ahead, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins only with the first or the single step. And Saudi Arabia is not new to this. Before even the unification of Yemen in 1990, think of this, of all the countries in the world that were helping Yemen, Kuwait, the United Nations, Great Britain, the Netherlands, Ireland, and additional countries, Saudi Arabia's aid was greater than all of the combined rest of the world with regard to roads, hospitals, schools, and mosques, centers of religious learning and secular training, without regard to the religious composition of the government. People have the image that Saudi Arabia is implacably opposed to minority Muslims who are not part of the Sunni Orthodox, 88 to 90% of all Muslims worldwide. Nothing could be further from the truth. Saudi Arabia's aid to Yemen has been without regard to gender, without regard to religion, without regard to political factor or faction. It's been the same with regard to Lebanon. Saudi Arabia worked harder in Taif in 1988 and 1989 to restructure the constitutional arrangement of Lebanon, which actually increased the influence and authority of the Shia element of Lebanon. So it's not true. And the same thing with Saudi Arabia's relationship with the government of Iraq, which has also, since 2003, been led by Shia elites. So this needs to be put to rest, this kind of misinformation, this kind of false stereotype, this kind of unfair treatment of a friend that is on the front lines of working to alleviate the horror, the devastation, the poverty, the dismemberment, and the shattering of the dreams of millions of Yemenis next door. America has no choice but to help a friend. If it doesn't help a friend, what kind of a friend is America? Can it call itself a friend? So there's a moral duty, legal, international obligation to help one's friends. One must not be alone abroad. Being alone abroad is a place one never wants to be. So we're partners with Saudi Arabia in many aspects of trying to make the world a better place in which to live than when we found it, when we were born and raised. And we've had an individual here who has increased information, insight, knowledge, understanding, empathy, education, experience, and analysis. What more could one ask for someone who is an educator as well as a world-renowned physician and government official, former Minister of Health, and now the Supervisor General of the King Salman Humanitarian and Relief Organization. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Colonel Dahouk, for a most educative session. We're all in your debt. Each of us is a beneficiary. Our gratitude to you, sir.